So, why is it, I guess my question had been to Pramila, and maybe you know the answer to this, is why is it that it's only at this stage that really most people even know that something like this is going on in their community?
You mean right towards the end is the
Yeah.
first time out? Because that's the way it is consciously planned by the people who put in these. So there's a decision made to, first of all, the company or companies commit themselves to fracking.
Right.
Then they have a product. They have to sell that product. They can't store the product. Storage is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So they get in, then a pipeline company comes in, says, we'll build your pipeline, take you up to a liquefying, where it can be liquefied and sent abroad. But you can't convince a state to allow taking people's property by eminent domain and all the dislocation and the destruction of wetlands and forests and everything just for somebody's profit. They decided it was a good idea. So, of course, this whole rationale that it is necessary, that we need to generate the power, that we don't have enough, that we're going to decommission coal, that we're not ready for renewables. So some company comes in and says, I'll give you a rationale. We'll create power plants. We'll get the government to create an energy plan which diminishes coal, and then they get to build these, as Pramila said, right under the sort of threshold. Shh. Stinker. You stinker.
She's trying to say, what about the cats?
Yeah, what about the cats?
What about the cats?
No.
Can you please talk about the cats?
So right under this threshold, so gas works. So they get the gas in, and then now it's how do you sell it? Because if you make a big deal out of it, people are going to see through it. Mm. So you don't want to have the governor. The governor says, listen, I just banned fracking. It's kind of risky. I don't want to use frack gas. What's my out? Okay, I'll tell you what. You don't even have to license this plant. We'll make the Office of Record to be the local town planning commission. They'll take all the heat. You don't have to worry about it. So this little small town of Waiwayanda and they get experts in, and the experts say, well, you got to have this and this and this. And they say, yeah, sure, we'll do it. Then as soon as the contract is signed, they fire all the experts. They bring in all the people who will support this plan, which is flawed unequivocally because there's something in it for them. And then the plan goes forward, and nobody knows. The paper hasn't announced it yet. They haven't run it. And I say, we're coming to your town. First thing they do is they get all the business leaders in the county together, which they did, which is what Pramila and I interrupted. 650 businessmen. And they tell the 650 businessmen, we have a $900 million trough running with money. Would you like some? Yeah, we want some. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll open this up. You can supply the toilet paper. You can supply the aprons. You can supply, I don't know, whatever the hell they use, whatever they need. So they now have ingratiated, still haven't talked to the media, but they got the business community, because the business community is going to get some of that money. And they love development. So here we are in a farming community. And that, as was said last night, Orange County needs to be developed, industrialized. What's a farming community? You mean you want it to look like Yonkers? Because you can make it into Yonkers or the Bronx very easily. So they don't release it at all. In fact, hey, cut it out, you stinker.
Kitty, come here.
Oh, she is a
Come
pain.
here.
Oh, she's just a total pain.
Come here. Come on.
That's right. You two fight it out. There you go. Oh, she just wants it. No, it's just a ten.
I
It's
know.
just come back with me and watch me eat.
Okay. All right.
So, that when people stood up at the meetings, when it was finally, like when they put in the compressor station, no one knew that the compressor station was put in because they knew the plant was in the process of being licensed. They just said, no, we need a compressor station because we got a pipeline going through. Well, they fought the compressor station, then the plant turned up. And the papers are already bought off because all their advertisers,
papers.
all their advertisers are those men who have agreed to partake of the trough. So they don't want to know, and they think more development, that means more people, that means more circulation for the newspaper. So everything, so this is the part that's really intriguing. This is what we were talking about. This is capitalism, which has no ethical or moral imperative. It has only one imperative: profit. And so it manages to, everybody falls into line so that you don't have to hear anything until you hear there's a little squib in your newspaper with that very fake drawing of what the plant will look like, and they talk about the money, and they talk about the power, and they talk about the jobs, and they talk about all this good stuff, and that's basically all you hear. So by the time the small group of naysayers, people who have made it their business to find out about the downside of this, by the time they organize and get ready, everybody in power says, oh, it's too late. Well, what can you do? It's too late. I mean, it's a fait accompli. It's done. Well, it isn't. In our particular case, it's not done. And it really isn't done. Even Shoreham, which was completely built, and they stopped it. So it can be stopped. But everything is by plan. Mm-hmm. Everything is organized. I mean, it's a business.
So then what's at stake?
With this plant?
Yeah.
The plant is the anchor project for the entire industry. The entire industry is about the exploitation of our natural resources, which at this point are inimical to our survival. So they have the industry has the short-term view that the only thing that concerns them is the profit that they make. And they will justify whatever they do because it's a very narrow field of vision. What's at stake in order to maintain this are our civil rights, our human rights, our existence on this planet. If you remember the picture that Josh showed about what will happen in New York if you have a 5 to 8 meter rise in sea level because of 2 degrees of warming, and it's goodbye New York. Well, goodbye New York is not just the dislocation of millions of people, and since Europe can't even handle 1 million of them now, what state's going to take New Yorkers? I don't imagine it would be more difficult for Trump to change his tune from Muslim to New Yorker. Iowans saying, no New Yorkers. Those New Yorkers, we got to get rid of them. Well, okay, so that's a little bit of a reach, but there's going to be incredible dislocation. When you have dislocation, you have a government maintaining the fiction because they are bought and paid for by those industries that have created the damage. So they use a militarized police force to quell dissent. As someone said today, journalists are now considered by the government to be terrorists. So whatever we do to terrorists, however we plan our relationship to terrorists, how we're going to deal with them, is the same way they're now dealing with journalists. You shuttle up a journalist, you get the journalist fired, you discredit the journalist, you find personal things, you threaten them, you get their bosses to send them, take them off a story, not to publish their story. I remember, what's his name, the wonderful, the best guy in the New York Times is, oh Jesus, I can't remember right now. I'd know in an instant. And he had a revelation. I shouldn't actually say this because now I'm not going to remember anything. But it completely what he said. He had them dead to rights, and I saw his presentation. and nobody has followed it up. It's like, and the woman was actually talking who just got arrested in Bahrain, and what has happened in Bahrain, where there is because I didn't go to Bahrain, but I went to Dubai, no, Qatar, and there's a strip. It isn't a strip, but there's a locality of the wealth and the buildings and the restaurants and the nightlife and the Ferrari dealerships and all this stuff. And then there is this blocked off area where you don't see how those people are living, and you go there. Bahrain actually had the largest number of protesters during the Arab Spring of any in relationship to their overall population of any country. And you hear nothing. Why do you hear nothing? You hear nothing because the United States has one of its most important military bases there. They couldn't send in U.S. troops because the Bahrainis wouldn't like it. So they got Saudis. They basically told the Saudis, yeah, we'll give you a great deal on, you want some F-18s? We got a whole bunch of them. We'll give those bargain basement prices. Just go quell the Arab Spring in Bahrain, which they did. And they're still doing it. And they arrested her. They arrested Greenwald's partner when he was coming through. Somebody mentioned that today too. Do these agencies not know? See, they tell people you can't communicate on your cell phone because we can crack your cell phone. So people start using human couriers, and then the agency says, yeah, but we got your courier too because we can stop and arrest your courier under the Terrorism Act, which is what they did. And so it is to basically frighten and disrupt any protest or the dissemination of information that is counter to what they've put out there.
So, do you believe though that if people, kind of getting back to what can be done, or what people can do and what they know and don't know, because I think that there are people that feel like they're powerless to do anything anyway.
No, we're not powerless. We have lost our ability to use our power appropriately, but we're not powerless. The people are the power, and they always will be the power. That's why, and as the repression gets stronger and stronger, and this has been true as long as I've been involved with in the 60s, as the repression gets more and more overt, you know that you're actually making an impression, that you're getting to them. And when it gets really important, that's what black people know. I mean, if you look, all of this is a fractal. And so you can look at any piece of it. You can look at the environmental movement, the animal rights movement. You can look at the Black Lives Matter movement, and you can understand in the context of communities of color, they have been experiencing all of this on a daily basis for as long as I can remember, and way back, because the problem was they brought in a workforce to build a country, and then somebody got the idea that instead of being considered 3/5 of a human being, they should be citizens. Now we had citizens. As citizens, they have voting rights, and even though you disenfranchise them by the thousands, still in all, they affect your power. What do you do with all those people? You don't need them anymore. You have machines now. What do you do with them? How do you make money off them? You put them in jail. You criminalize their community. You create an army of occupation. You militarize it. You have a justice system which is inequitable and unjust, and you send them into a private prison run by corporations which have no accountability. And so you got 2.1 million people warehoused. Well, so this is what capitalism sees. It sees any opportunity to turn anything into an engine of profit. The government has become an engine to move the wealth of the people of America to the top. That's what it is. That's what the government does for a business. That's their business. That's their everyday business. They have no other business. Not protecting our rights, not regulating industry, not conducting foreign policy. That's all done by the military industrial, the security state. So that's all they do. They simply find ways to move the wealth of ordinary people up the ladder.
So then,
what can be done?
and what can be done, and what do you say to people who just feel like they have nothing, they don't know what to do? There are people who say, I don't know what to do, and
yeah, you see, I never buy it. People say to me, so I'm an animal rights activist, and I go to a meeting of 30 environmentalists, and they're all talking about, the importance of their issue and how to fight fracking and what are we going to do about power plants and we got to go on, etc. And on the lunch table is every different kind of lunch meat. And I should have said, if I was Ingrid Newkirk, I would have said, are you nuts? You don't see the connection between what you're fighting for and what this is? The unconsciousness that goes along with it? Just like what Josh said yesterday. You have to stop using the stuff. You want it to end, you have to stop using the stuff. It's not all that easy. My wife and I discussed it today. So people say to me, well, you can't do anything about what would you do about industrialized agriculture? What would you kick all those farmers off? I said, look, everything shifts, but how does it shift? It shifts one person at a time. You want to know if you make a difference? You want to know how to make a difference? Don't eat meat for one day. And think how many animals you have saved. Now, you may find that after a little while you want to up it to 2 days. What are we asking you to do? Are we asking you to think of the utopian world in which somebody's going to say, yeah, but what about the traffic signs? And who's going to do this? And how does that look? And where do we get our water from? And well, how will we do gasoline? That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to get conscious in our own life and live based on the principles that we believe in, the world we want to have, not just for ourselves. That's capitalism has taught us from kindergarten that the only concern is this. But the natural human instinct, the instinct that is powerful, the instinct that will change all of this is, it's not this, it's us. So, once you make that switch, you make that decision, you start thinking in terms of us. How can I be of service? How can I just say a nice word to the checkout lady who is working for $7.25 and is worried that she can't afford her rent and her family's going to be kicked out? So just to lighten people's day, concern ourselves with other people, engage with other people, engage with the issues not based on partisanship, because that's what they've done now. There's supposedly two parties. There isn't two parties. There's only one party. And there are people on the periphery. One's a lunatic and a madman and a fascist, and the other is a guy who is not outside the system, but he understands the system does not work. And everybody supports him. They say, great, you understand it. And this time we're going to do what we did with Roosevelt. We're going to hold our feet to the fire. Now, probably a lot of people in the 20s and 30s didn't think that they counted for much either. But they evidently, because they had to support each other, it got to the point where Roosevelt would turn to the industrialists of his time and say, if you do not allow me to institute reforms, the people are going to turn this into a socialist state. Which do you want? Because they will socialize all your businesses, because that's where they're headed. Now, if you will grant them a certain amount of support, then we can manage the rest. So this time, and maybe Bernie feels that way, I know that everybody pushes everybody's pushing Bernie, go further. Yes, he's on message, and that's really important. It's important to stay on message. But all those people, Black Lives Matter people, environmental people, educational people, everybody is saying, yes, and how do we take back power? How do we localize power? How do we localize our distribution process, our energy, our food supply? Because that's the only way it's going to work, by communities. So, all you have to do is one thing. All you have to do is one thing. You want to know what to do about CPV? There's that big plan, big thing. Just write one letter, handwritten letter to Governor Cuomo saying, do not give them the permit, the water permit for that lateral pipeline. It is wrong to do. And if everybody in New York wrote a letter, it doesn't get done. It gets stopped. This is how it gets stopped.
How do you, I guess, because why isn't it happening? Why is it that people don't do stuff like that, though? Why aren't people writing letters as much as they could?
People have been carefully taught that it is none of their business, that they're powerless, that nobody listens, that the system is ineffectual. It doesn't matter whether you write or not. Somebody else is paying the guy, and they're just going to make a demand. So why should I write a letter? If I write a letter, will I get in trouble? Will I get on a list? If I speak about this with my coworkers, will I be ostracized? If I start delving into this one issue, will I find other issues? Will I find that my children's food is poisoned and what they get at lunch in their schools? What are my kids being taught? Should I really concern myself with this? Since they're being taught to pass exams, shouldn't I find out whether they can think or not? If I'm really upset that they spend so much time on their cell phone, do they spend so much time on their cell phones because nothing in this world engages them until they reach a certain age where they can become consumers? I mean, they're consumers the entire way, but the purse strings usually are held by the parents. But when they become consumers by their own, then they can be fit into cogs in the machine. But by then, that time, it's sort of like the old Catholic Church, give me any child until he's 6 years of age, and he'll be a Catholic the rest of his life. By the time you get through this indoctrination, it's so insidious. Kids, if you ever read a book like Summerhill, they want to learn, and they want to know things, and they want to create things. And so the system says, but we don't want people who know things and are interested and want to create things, because then we create our own competition. We want to funnel through just so many people that we can use. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you divide the school day, into 50-minute increments, and you ring a bell. Talk about Pavlov's dog. So some kid who really likes math and is just beginning to understand a simple concept and wants to pursue it, the bell rings, and he goes to social studies, which he hates. And he sits there and he's bored shitless. So he gets on his phone. It doesn't matter. I'll to hell with it. And they get regimented and indoctrinated. So we have to change. We have to change the way we think. We have to change the way we speak, the way we talk to each other, the way we relate to each other, all those things. And it sounds like, it's too big, but it isn't too big. It's just one moment at a time. Become conscious.
So in terms of this power plant, so you actually think it's that simple, just if everybody wrote a letter to Governor Cuomo, that would stop it?
It might. If only half the people wrote a letter. It might. If it doesn't, if half of the people of New York write letters to Governor Cuomo and it doesn't change his opinion, about half of those people are going to say, this is screwed. We got to fix this. Now, Governor Cuomo, no matter who pays his salary, still has to be elected to get that salary. The election is up to us. So when you look at the race between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton represents the status quo. I will tell you all the things I think you should hear, and then I will do exactly as I have been doing all my life. I support American empire. I will give you incremental change, but I will not upset the status quo. And Bernie is saying the whole thing is screwed. It's upside down.
The system is rigged.
What? The system is rigged. And so people are gravitating to that, and they're actually coming out to vote so that a man who starts at 3% of acceptance suddenly winds up winning a primary because people, young people especially, have said, we have to change this whole thing. That's why I think Trump scares them, and that's why I think Bernie scares them. I think that's why Bernie got 10 seconds of coverage on CNN while Trump got 26 minutes of coverage on CNN. Now, they're scared of him too, but it's a different kind of fear.
Right. So, what about, is there anything else that you think people can do to not just stop the power plant, but also the pipelines? Like, how is that connected, and what this whole issue of eminent domain as well? Like, what is it that? How is that all?
We have a legal system that we have to change. That has to change. Eminent domain is necessary under some circumstances. The question is, it should be eminent domain. The necessity should be for the entirety, for the polity, for the community. It's for serving their needs. If one person resists something for whatever reason, and there is a compelling community interest to have whatever needs to be done, then eminent domain, much to the chagrin of the person, and I understand that, but it can't be companies saying, I want to make a profit, and I will convince the people that I've put into office by giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars to sign legislation allowing me to do this, and then I will say there is a compelling national interest, and that allows me to go through their property so that I can send the gas that I have to be liquefied and sold abroad for 6 times as much as I can get for it here in America. That all has to be changed. No, there are a lot of things. We did something. We locked ourselves together in front. You can sit down. You can refuse. You can be as creative as guys were, as the Yippies were, as Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, and those guys.
What if 1,000 people? What if 10,000 people showed up? For example, when they were trying to cut trees, what if 10,000? What if an army of people showed up and just sat down? What do you think?
Well, I was thinking about that this morning. I think it would work. It would be incredible. It would stop. We had over 100,000 people in Washington when I was there during the war of Vietnam. There's so many wars you have to name them now. And the Washington police arrested 45,000 people. 45,000 people were arrested and put in JFK Stadium. Actually, there were more because I wasn't in JFK Stadium. I was in a jail. So they can arrest 45,000, 50,000, 100,000 people. A lot of people who know a great deal more than I do say, we have turnkey totalitarianism. That everything is in place to make it a totalitarian state. All you just have to do is turn the key. It's the one thing that the militia people, I sort of agree with them on. I mean, they got it all backwards. But for sure, if they were threatened, they would declare martial law. Now, that has a repercussion as well. Then you have full-on revolution. I would hope that it wouldn't come to full-on revolution. I would hope that we could do this peacefully. You never know what's going to arise. Martin Luther King arises. Malcolm X arises. Fred Hampton arises. Gandhi arises. They arise out of necessity. We, as people, have got to create the necessity, which will manifest the person who articulates the Occupy movement, and I think to some degree many of the movements would now say it is not, there is a new paradigm. It is not something that is led. It isn't the best and brightest that will make the transformation. It's all of us together will make the transformation. There isn't any single person with a vision large enough or courage enough to die, but you have to be effective. But all of us together is a force that is unquenchable. It can't be stopped.
Grushka, we got everything we need.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Sure you do.
more than everything we need. I'm
I'm
just
sure
like
you do.
loving what you're saying.
I don't think we need to have him do a statement.
Yeah.
Because he just. He
I
did a
know.
good job.
Yeah. I mean, I think you articulated everything that
Yeah.
needs to happen.
Yeah. So,
Well, that's all I would have said in a statement anyway.
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly.
It's,
Yeah. Exactly.
Josh, you don't have to photograph, but
Yeah.
what Josh said is true. The issue is love and fear. There are two emotions.
Yeah.
And when you talk about love, it gets people go, their eyes
You're
cross.
a tree hugger.
Yeah, their eyes cross.
Yeah.
They don't understand it as a dynamic organizing principle, love.
Yeah.
But it is. Whereas fear, of course, is everything that you see around us now. It divides, it dehumanizes, it disempowers.
That's why that saying, the only thing that you have to
The
fear is fear itself,
That's
because
correct.
that is the
That's-
destructive
that's
principle.
That's correct. And yes.
And right now, I think that that's what's gripping people's actions. That people are being prevented from their own fear of even going outside of their house. It's sort of like they're just frozen. I think that there's just so many of the population that is frozen.
Yeah, but there's
Fear.
a lot less now than there was just a little while ago.
Yes. And what gave me hope, what gave me this just blew me away, was the climate rally in New York City. All the people that showed up to that, and just, it was really heartening to see that.
Yeah.
And so I do think that but there's still that element of, people that are gripped in fear because they're just overwhelmed with all those messages.
It's
fear.
interesting. I had something going on with my back, so we stood for about 4 hours. We got uptown. I chose not to be in the front.
Yeah.
thought,
You're on the Upper West Side?
So I went the way up to, I think we went up to 96th Street.
Oh, okay. I
So-
was on 86th Street.
Yeah,
I was at 86th Street.
and we stood and stood and stood and stood,
it seemed like
and
hours.
finally it started to march, and I made it down to, I don't know. And I said to Anna and my friend, I said, I can't walk anymore, can't do it anymore. So we'd been here.
Yeah.
So we went 1 block over to Broadway, and it was a street fair, and people were selling hot dogs and trinkets, and people were eating ice cream cones. And I thought, do you people know that there are 400,000 people over there trying to save the planet? And you're walking around as though nothing is happening in this city.
Yeah,
Are you
it's that
not?
disconnect.
It's a
So-
it's a disconnect.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the habitual, mind-numbing. This is the thing I do on my Saturday. All that noise that's coming from over there and all the. I don't want to know. I don't.
Right,
I don't want
right.
to. I don't. I want my ice cream cone. I want my stroll. I want to ride my bike with my girlfriend and have a croissant.
Yeah.
Well, that can be continued until it starts to impinge on you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Then, so when this plant is built and begins, and they say it's too late, but it'll never be too late.
No,
I don't
never,
care what they
never.
say. It'll never
I
be
agree
too
with
late
you.
to shut it down.
Yeah.
We can always shut it down.
Yeah.
The trick is not to have it built in the first place.
Right, and to waste all of that, all those resources, and also start the ball rolling
Yeah.
in something that the energy could be placed somewhere
Of
else.
course.
In building something. And that whole thing that Josh was talking about last night, which is also what Buckminster Fuller says about, let's build something out. Like, you don't fight things you don't change things by fighting the existing reality, but if you create a new model, if you create something else that works,
Yep.
if you create something else that works and actually is profitable for other people,
Yeah.
like it's actually become something that people profit from,
Yeah.
not just a small percentage, but everybody
You
profits
don't
from.
mean, you mean, you're using the word profit, but you don't mean monetarily.
No, that's not what I mean.
No.
I mean profit in the sense of their lives become better. I mean,
Yeah.
that there's a way to. I guess it's a win-win.
Enrich.
But it's sort of like, I think that there's this concept I think people feel is that in order to have a winner, you have to have a loser.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So there's that. It's
Binary.
right.
Binary thinking.
But it's actually
Both
not
and.
real.
No, it's not real.
That's not real
It's
at
a
all.
fiction.
We
It's a bad model.
can all win. It's a bad model. It's what's causing the ultimate, destruction and just of everything. I mean, everything that we know of, humanity, all sentient beings. And so if we can just shift that, it's a shift in perspective.
Mm.
That seems like it's so subtle, but it is subtle. But I do think that when people have it come into their backyards, that is when they say, okay, I hear what you're
Enough-
saying. And that
enough is enough.
repetition, it's the repetition, that's the other thing. And that's why I think these things are important, like to get out there, these kinds of little mini, pieces that people can see. Because if you keep, it's like the advertising agencies bombarding you, the gas industry bombarded the public with slick advertising of how natural gas was good for us.
Yeah.
Even using that wording,
Mhm.
natural. It's so natural.
Yep.
It's so good for you. You can drink it, kind of thing. And but they spent millions of dollars, gazillions of dollars.
Mhm.
And it was repetition. So if people kept hearing, like I had neighbors say to me, "Oh, they were just parroting the commercials, parroting. They didn't even know what they were saying. They were just saying, oh yeah, no, this is good for us, this is good for America, it's going to bring jobs and all this other stuff," because they kept hearing it over and over again. So if we do the same thing, if we, the people that maybe don't have the same gazillions of dollars, the same resources, but if we actually repeat, hello everybody, we can all win. There's another way. There's another way to do this that doesn't destroy things, that doesn't just, isn't about destruction, right? And so if we keep doing that over and over again, eventually that's how the human brain works. I mean, eventually people will go, and that's like the whole marketing thing, the 7-point marketing sort of plan, right? It's repetition. Just keep doing it. Just keep repeating it over and over again. So, and that's another thing that Josh was saying, is just these rooms, just keep going to events, keep going, and meeting with people, with your community, to do things together. But the divide and conquer thing has been too powerful, and so that's why people feel.
I've been at it a long time.
Yeah.
Shakespeare had the same problem.
Yeah, that's
he,
true.
He actually wrote a play about it. That's what King Lear is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do not see because they do not feel. It's right in front of them. You could see it if you cared to.
Yeah.
If you felt
very
anything.
powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's why when you left the crowd of people and you went to the fair, people were just like in this other world. They're being taught. We are being taught not to feel
That's correct.
as a way of life.
That's correct.
Because it's about survival. It's like, okay, well, no, I can't stop for a homeless person, or I can't, oh, there's a dog over there, that's dying. Oh, I can't look, I've got to go over here. Because if I actually feel something, that would mean I would have to.
I was in.
Act.
I did a production of a Stoppard play in San Francisco, and I lived away from the theater, and I would walk to the theater at night, and I would literally step over homeless people. And so when she said, "What do you want to do next?" I said, "I want to do Lear, and we have to get those people into the theater. Either they have to be on stage when he says, 'Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er thou art, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides your,'" so he goes on like this. I wanted to have them either on stage or I wanted to have them in the audience. And
Oh my God.
so I was thinking, because they just have this huge problem. So the other day there was an article, a letter to the editor from one of these .com guys complaining that he had to step, how gross it was, that he had to step over these people. And how could they allow this wonderful city that he was investing his life in to have all these things? and it was so blatant that even the paper, it got picked up by Truthdig. I don't know what they did in San Francisco, but that's where it goes from. It goes from, somebody saying, like in Calcutta, "Isn't this awful?" In Calcutta, then they couldn't. Now they could always do something about it, but they didn't. But you step over them. I didn't know what to do.
But were you able to have them in the audience?
No. I came up with a concept for King Lear that so frightens everybody that nobody wants to do
I
it.
want to do it. Let's do it.
It's the
my
best.
God, that would be amazing.
It's the best. It's the
That
best.
would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just, and by the way, that I think that's my favorite play. I mean, I think that's just such a profoundly.
It's never been done.
I
It's never been done. The play has never been done. Only in Shakespeare's time it was done.
but not now.
No, not since Cromwell closed the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
It was only done twice in his lifetime.
I didn't realize that.
Twice, yeah. They'll say, "Oh no, there's just no record," but there is a record of 2 performances. The first performance was for James, and Shakespeare had a relationship with Elizabeth. He wrote in code, so he could tell Elizabeth, who was smart enough to understand the code, what was happening in her world, in his world, that she would never hear because she only heard from the people around her, and they were all the nobility. Same problem we have now. So when he did the plays, he created a symbology so that she could see what was happening, because there was the repression of the Catholics, the recussants. He was a recussant. He was a Catholic. And he saw it happening, which led to Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes almost blew up James and his wife and the kids and almost every nobleman, right? So Shakespeare thought, after Macbeth, okay, I can talk to James. And he wrote this play. And James went, we're not doing that. So I believe the play was banned, and he tried to fix it. It was done one other time by a company in the north, which was Catholic, in York, and they were all arrested.
Interesting.
The theaters closed, and it didn't play again until the restoration of Charles. And they could not stand the play. They couldn't stand the onslaught of the truth in the play, so they rewrote the play. A man named Tate rewrote the play. Lear lives, Cordelia marries Edgar, there's no fool, and that version played in England for 150 years, way until almost the end of the 19th century. It played that. And so every actor and every director passed on their version of this lie, and they all inculcate it. And so no one does the play. They all think it's a play about an addled old man who, out of his vanity, rejects the daughter who actually loves him and has the consequences. Oh, and there's another story, some other story about some Edgar and Edmund, and it just doesn't matter. He gets blinded.
So
and
that's the real story. That's the real story.
Edmund,
Yeah, yeah,
yes, that's
yeah,
correct.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why
yeah, yeah.
the play is actually called King Lear and His Three Daughters, and poor Tom, Edgar,
Edmund.
as poor Tom, son of Gloucester, blah blah. It's the resonance between the two stories, between an ordinary, not so ordinary, but middle class, as opposed to the way Lear handled it, and how those two worlds intersect.
But it seems like it's so relevant today to do.
It is the most
like,
relevant play
yeah,
today
yeah.
there is. I set my play in Sarajevo during the siege, so that everybody in the audience they'll be kept in a barbed wire enclosure.
You haven't done this.
No, I haven't done it. I have it
It's in
all.
your
I
mind.
have it all in my head. I have the whole damn thing in my head.
You have to do it.
I know I have to do it.
Among all the millions of other things, but I'm just
It can't
saying
be.
that-
It can't be done in a theater. It can't be done in a theater. Can't have.
What
Can't
would
have.
happen?
What?
What would happen if it was done in a theater?
Well, you see what happens when you do a revolutionary, when you do something, you want people to see. You want to peel back the layer so that they can see, so they can feel. And what they do is they get a babysitter, they park their car, they go to a fancy restaurant, they have maybe 3 cocktails and a
Yeah.
bottle of wine.
Right.
They come to the theater, they sit in a nice plush seat. About 2 minutes in it, the guy is going like this. The woman is, it's going right over her head. She doesn't understand any of the language at all. What does she know about a king? Who is a king? What's a king?
Yeah.
What's the daughter? Why did he get angry at her? Why did she do that? I don't understand any part of this, because they don't know they don't know the history, right? So they watch it and they go away and nothing happens. Nobody feels. You have to create the audience to be Shakespeare's audience. They knew what was happening because their friends were being killed by Elizabeth's people. Their houses were being taken away. So the people of Sarajevo, when they went to the theater during the siege, they had to run along Sniper Alley, not to be shot by the Serbs who were in the high-rises in the hills and would fire as you ran through. Women, children, they would shoot them for no reason, just they've got nothing else to do. Terror.
Yeah.
But those people still braved it to come and see Waiting for Godot and a production of Hair. Those people understood that this experience of the theater defined them as human beings, as Sarajevans, as being alive. That's what you have to get a contemporary, fat, lazy, slightly inebriated American audience to say, holy shit, it's us.
That's the cathartic moment
That's right.
of like, yeah.
It's
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
He's us.
Mm-hmm.